Okay, today's daf is daf Lamed Zayin Amad Aleph. However, we're going to pick up from Lamed Vav Amad Beis, 5 lines from the bottom of the daf. Said in the Mishnah, that was the final section of the Mishnah. Omar Rebbe Yishmael b'mad dvar mahamurim b'sada halavan. Right, and the Gemara explained. We saw machlekes with Shmuel. Brought down the machlekes with Chachamim in Rabbi Yishmael if you require 3 harvests of each type of tree in order to establish a chazak. Now with Shitas Rabbi Yishmael, it works. According to Chachamim, you need 3 years. Amar Abaya. Abaya says, Mid the Rabbi Yishmael, from the words of Rabbi Yishmael, Nishmal Rabbanon, we can assume, we can deduce an opinion of the Rabbanon in this following scenario. Okay, the Gemara Lamed Zayin, the Mitzvah Hashem is going to talk about it. We're going to see in a few moments. Hayuloi shloisha ilanois shloishim, not shloisha. Sorry, you had 30 trees. Mimata asara leves sa. You have this land of 30 trees. It was planted in a density of 10 to a basra. So you have every Beisah, we said, is 2,500 square amas. To give a little background, now that we're a little more knowledgeable based on the previous blätter, a typical healthy tree, we saw this when we learned Ula, by Bikurim, the 16 amas. A big healthy tree takes 833 and a third. We saw the whole machlekes with Ula Laidak, Lachumra Laidak, Lakula Laidak. But the concept that in 2,500 square amas, 3 big trees will be sitting there, and each one, that's how much it takes to get the nourishment out. A young tree's netiyos is 10. 250 netiyos, 250 square amas for each netiyah. So that's the background. Now, what did he do over here? He had 7,500 square amas into strips. Each 25 had 10. Achal asara b'shanazu. You planted and harvested 10 in each year, 2021, 2022, 2023. It is a chazak. Okay. Now, good morning, Julie. Good morning, Chaim. We just started. We got going. It was getting a little late, but we are still on Lamed Vav Amud Beis, bottom of the Amud. We're talking about halacha of when you have 30 trees in a square footage of 7,500, which is 3 beisas. The halacha is you get a chazak. Okay, now, like we established, it requires trees planted in a ratio of exactly 10 beisah, because that's what it requires, as we explained on Chavav Amud Beis. Therefore, you buy effectively by maintaining this ratio of 10 for every 2,500. Zokter Rashbam, what we're doing is you're effectively using up the whole entire field. However, if you would have only 2 trees or 9 nitiyas in a beisah, the halacha is you only get a chazak of kimloya oira v'salai, which means you get the tree, the karka underneath, and enough for you to go around with your basket, like we saw already in Daf Chavav. Okay. However, another important point is, if you put on more than 10 trees, you're already not doing what's normal for a typical owner. So you're doing like the Lashon Rashbam is, the loy achzik kedemachziki inchi. That's one of the foundations. To beget a chazaka, you have to be machzik like the regular people, the regular custom. So therefore, exactly 10 times 3, 7,500 square amas, you have 30 trees. Only that ratio we can understand that you would get such a chazak. Okay, even though you ended up, let's explain. The Gemara explains how it works. Even though you only ended up using a third of the field each year. Where are we coming from? How do we see their Rabbanan it's going to be a chazaka? Why? Because lav mi amar Rabbi Yishmael. For did Rabbi Yishmael not say the chad peira have a chazaka lekula peiri? Rabbi Yishmael ruled earlier what is the halach of a field that only produces once a season? The Gemara says, according to Rabbi Shmuel, even though there's not 3 years, as long as you did 3 seasons, you have a chazaka. And what would be the halacha like we saw if you have a field, an orchard, 3 different types of fruit? Again, you could get a chazaka within 9 months. Every 3 months, you harvest a type of fruit. Okay. Therefore, we clearly see that Rabbi Shmuel, as long as you use the field as a whole 3 times, you get a chazaka. So, lav mi amar Rabbi Shmuel, chad peira have chazaka lekulu peri. An act of chazaka on one crop is going to help, right, to the entire peiros. Hachinami, so too chachamim are going to hold. Hanu have chazaka lahani, vahani have chazaka lahani. It means even though there's 30. Did you bring your parish chai today?
Yeah.
Yes,
Can I grab it for a second? I'm very curious if they bring down
Sure.
the illustrations on Daf Lamed Zai. Well, we're getting closer. Yep. It's ready. Hayu shloishim loy lanes mimata sarlavesa. So you have 7,500 square amas. Each one is exactly 10, like we saw in Chavavim and Beis, and it needs to be 10. That's the nourishment of saplings, of netias. Can be bigger trees, only 3. But you had these 30 trees. Okay, this is Taisa says 9 is not going to work. Let's see if there's more pictures. That's it. That's really what they bring down. Okay, very interesting. I thought they would maybe quote a little more. All right. That jumps all the way to the Daf and the Dalet. So you're not going to need to bring this for in the near future. Another told Daf and the Dalet. Okay. So lav mi amar Rabbi Shmuel chaper v'chazaka l'kulu peiros. So too want to say that these chazakas lahani shahap lahani, which means to say is the way we look at it is, even though you harvested 10 trees in the first year, it should be a chazaka for the other 20 trees, etc., like that. You're building yourself a chazaka. So let's explain a little better. According to Rabbi Shmuel's opinion, a chazaka, we explained, it's not about 3 years, rather harvesting 3 crops. That's what makes it. Another time we want to establish is harvesting only a shlish, 1/3 of the field's trees, would constitute usage for the entire field. Now, there's no question that Chachamim are going to argue on Rabbi Shmuel's first point, which is 3 harvests is not 3 years. Chachamim are very clear. We learned this, that in Shitas Chachamim, Rabbanan needs 3 entire years. However, why should we assume that Chachamim are arguing in Rabbanan on the second point of 1/3 of the field? So as long as you did a crop of 10, it should help for Han. That's how the Rashbam wants to explain what is going on in Shitas Chachamim. Okay. Vahani mili, very important point, is Heicha Deloy Afiku. Aval Afiku V'loy Achal Loy Chazaka. What is going on with the other 20 trees? So Avada Zaktabaya has to be talking about, just like in Shitas Rabbi Shmuel, where you have a sada, and there's pomegranates, and then there's dates, and then there's figs. When you pull up to harvest the pomegranates, are the figs ripe? Rabbi Shmuel agrees it's not ripe. That's why it's 3 separate crops. Memela huadin by hach over here, it has to be the other 20 trees are not either ready to be harvested. Otherwise, more than that, it'd say you're not machzik of the machzik inchi. You're indicating that you're not the true owner. Okay, right? That's exactly what it shows the thief. He's not willing. He doesn't have the chutzpah to steal everything. He tries it slowly. He comes, takes a little, tests the water, sees if he gets a reaction, etc. Vahu. Another point is, it has to be the vazi bazuze. It has to be that we see entire sada. It's 7,500 square amas.
So it can't be in.
It can't be in one strip of a beisah, because then all you're getting is a chazaka of that beisah. It's really considered 3 separate beisahs. However, if you have a massive field, 7,500 square amas, as long as the trees are 10 each, enough that it's getting the equal nourishment, and you're machziki like everyone else, so even if there's 3 trees over there, 4 trees over there, 3 trees in the middle, and you go and you pluck out whatever's ready, it's very normal. That's considered a chazaka. It has to be scattered, otherwise you consider it a separate field. Okay, now it makes much more sense. Before these 2 rulings, it's very hard to understand why in the world should he have a chazaka by using a third of the field? However, if you break it out with these two concepts, that the other 20 didn't grow anything, and it's scattered, we could picture it as one big unit, one big field, and you're going around. Okay.
The scattered trees are the same fruit or no?
Correct, yes. They are the same. That's exactly what we're trying to compare it to Rabbi Shmuel, who says when it's different types of fruit, as long as it's three separate crops, it's going to chazaka. We're trying to establish that lefi Chachamim's argument with Rabbi Shmuel is not total. Rather, it's in the point of years versus crops. So as long as you have the years, then he won't argue with Rabbi Shmuel on the other aspect, which is using a partial field as long as it's normal. It's very normal that you can have a massive field, and it's scattered throughout the years. It doesn't grow in one big shot. It's considered a chazaka, just like Rabbi Shmuel, it's considered three separate crops. That was Abayo's chiddush. This is a very geshmak of machlekes, how Abaye pulled out that Rabbi Shmuel is only arguing regarding the years. Rabbanon's not going to argue regarding the crops. We're going to shift to a different topic right now, and we're going to talk about a field that a person sold to Reuven his trees and to Shimon the karka. So let's give a little agdama. Usually, I walk over to you and I purchase trees, and I don't specify what is going on regarding the land underneath. So it depends. How many trees did you sell the buyer? If it's specifically, to be exact, as long as it's 3 and above, 3 trees and above, the halacha is, I sold you a sada ilanis, a tree field. And therefore, automatically, it's going to include the land around the trees. And Yetzer Hashem, we're going to see this much more by Arichas on Pei Aleph. We're going to get there then. And the Gemara over there is going to talk about that you're going to have Kumlai Ayarasala, enough to spread around. Jack Reddy questioned me before the share, what is going on with the path? We'll discuss it, how in the world could I get to the tree if it's the middle of the field without a path? We're going to discuss this extensively in the future, how everything is going to work out. However, so if it's 3 trees and above, you get the land underneath the grass, underneath the tree. However, when it's 2 trees, it's a machlekes tanoim, and we're going to go through this machlekes. Now, however, another point is, we're going to see this later in the Gemara, is going to talk about, in Samach Tes, what happens if you purchase land without specifying there's trees in that land. I bought a massive property, there's trees. The halacha is, we look at the trees agav to the land. It's pashut that it's like secondary, it's not a separate thing, and therefore it's included in the sale. That is another point to bring out. One last point to bring out, what happens when you send its lands to one person, which is our point, and you sell trees to somebody else. So there's no question that the buyer of the land buys the trees, even though in a regular case he would get the trees because you clearly see explicitly that he's selling it to somebody else, right? But the question is the other way. Does the person who bought the trees have any schusim in the karka? So this is what we're going to break down. Very pleasant machlokes going on. Zeh hechezek bi'ilanois v'zeh hechezek bekarka. Each one they did a kinyan, chazaka. Either you could say the Rishbam says, make it simpler. One pruned the trees, one dug up his land, started plowing, and like that he has a kinyan chazaka. What is the halachas now? Does the buyer of the tree, like we established, this is our question, does the buyer of the tree acquire any land together with the purchase of the trees? Amar Ezvit, Rav Zid wants to say, Zeh kana ilanois, Zeh kana karka. According to Ezvit, you get only the trees, I get only the karka. It's a 2-way street. And even though he bought more than 3 trees, which is usually when a person just sells 3 trees, he gets land, over here, he is not going to get the karka. And the reason is, it's a 2-way street. Just like the purchaser of the land says, usually I get the trees, but since he sold it to you, I'm not getting the trees. Then the purchaser of the trees answers back the other way. The other way. Just like the purchaser of the trees. I basically tell the purchaser of the trees, I usually would get the trees, but you got it. So too by me, I got the land. You don't get that. Therefore, you're not going to get the land under the trees. Okay. However, there's no chiddush. There's nothing. It's pashut to say that there's no havmin in the world to say, okay, so call a tree cutter and remove your tree. It's in my land. there's no question that the schusim he gets is that he gets to use the tree. So really, what's the nafkamina if you get the land? The nafkamina is what happens when trees die eventually. So if it's your land, you can replant the tree, put a new tree in. And we're going to see in a moment, they used to transfer trees all over. You started with saplings in a field, and then you picked it up, and you replaced it. We're going to see that. So the point is, that's the nafkamina if you get the land. If you're getting the land, then you can replace the tree. Otherwise, all you're getting is the usage of the tree. So let's see it inside. That was what says Chiddush, two-way street. You get the trees, I get the land. No one bothers each other. When the tree dies, you'll pay for a rubbish removal, tree removal, and goodbye. Maskif la Rav Papa. Frakt Rav Papa. Im Kain, if this is so, Ein loy lival ilonois bekarka klum. The owner of the tree has no right in the land. Then let the owner of the land tell the owner of the trees when the trees eventually die. Uproot your dead tree. Avada, we're talking about we established that Avada you don't have to cut it now. And be gone. So it's what the Papa's issue is. It's not fair. It's not equal. That if the tree dies, I get completely removed from the karka. Why? Because Taisus, to explain it better, Taisus explains that to make the kasha better, we're talking about the filu begimel ilanis. We establish when it's two trees, we can understand some machlekes. However, when it's three trees, usually when I buy three trees, it's a sadi ilanis. I get the karka underneath. So Rav Papa specifically is asking, how can it be when I buy three trees, I get the land? It's a sadi ilanis. Suddenly over here, you should, just because you bought the rest of the karka, you should get this karka. Makes no sense. However, Zvid Lamaisa maintained you don't get any land because he has a right to sell the karka. So according to Zvid, it comes out that even though when a person usually sells 3 ilanis without specifying, he gets the karka. However, Zokt Reb Zvid, if I go and sell the land to somebody else, he does not get the schusim of the land under those trees. El Amr of Papa, Rav Papa argued in Zvid, and he said no. Zeh kana ilonois v'chetzi karka, v'zeh kana ilonois v'chetzi karka. Over here, avada chetzi doesn't mean chetzi. It just means it's just a sprach of talking. Rashbam clearly says that lav davka chetzi karka.
Would this be similar to a renter? That the renter uses the apartment or the trees or whatever?
Yes and no. Yes, regarding the usage. No, that it's nothing to do with a renter, because a renter has to do, that we're going to see the Gemara is going to talk about, like we explained extensively, we're going to learn. What are the schusim? How is he going to get into the house? It's going to be pashut really if he sells the derech, or he has to fly, yava v'yifrach. The Gemara talks about it. Later on, he has to take a helicopter ride. We're going to see that. So it's not necessarily similar to a renter.
They had helicopters in those days?
The Gemara's literally, the Gemara's little lashon is, he should take a chicken or an eagle and get there. The Gemara questions, what do you want? Parach Laz? He should just jump? We're going to see that later on in the future prakim. We're going to get there.
I don't think you're going to get there.
Chas v'shalom, we're going to get there. Okay. Now, so according to Rav Papa, Vada Chetzi Dr. Rashbam doesn't mean specifically Chetzi. Rather, he's going to get Kimloya Oiroi V'Sali. Okay. Or the Rashbam brings another pshat, Inami, it is Chetzi, where the land was sold only as large as was needed to sustain the trees. Then Yutaka are going to split up half the land. Okay, let's stick to the first pshat, Lav Davka Chetzi. Now, the Gemara is going to talk about instances where a man who owned the field with trees in it, he sold the land or the trees, and he left it for himself the rest. Either I sold you the karka, my trees are for me, or I just sold you the ilanis, but the karkas for me. So let's go through it. Pshita macha karka v'shayir ilanis lefanav. One sold his land and retained the trees on it for himself. Right? He sold the land. And your ilanis for yourself. Yesh loy ilanis, that if the tree dies, yesh loy karka, sorry, if the tree dies, havada vavada, he's not foolish enough to sell the schusim of replanting it. Now, I just want to go back to bring out one last point, the machlokes between Rav Papa and Rav Zvid, to explain it a little better. Rav Papa would hold that the person who owns the trees, would acquire the land even if he only purchased 2 trees. Even though usually we find, we're going to see in a moment, this is where we're about to start, so I want to go back, by Mocha Karka V'Shara Kolshu. If the seller keeps it for himself by 2 trees, Rav Papa agrees, it's your land. However, what happens when he sells to someone else the Karka, Zok Rav Papa, he still gets the land. And the Gemara is going to explain, that's why I want to say it outside first. The Gemara is going to explain that Rav Papa has a taina, just like the Bala tree tells the Bala Karka, just like he sold you land forever and ever, that's what land is. Who didn't he sold me trees forever and ever to get replaced? So that taina is only when he sells the land to you. However, if the owner of the land just retains the land and sells you the trees by 2 trees, Rav Papa will agree that he only gets the schusim of the tree. Once they die, they're gone. Okay, that was the Rishbami Ben inside. Now,
In other words, you can't replant one.
he can't replant one. However, so Rav Papa holds if he sold the land to someone else, he could, but if he retains it, he can't. Now, Rav Zvid is going to maintain that even at the other extreme, even if he purchased 3 trees in a regular scenario, it's so extreme to the Rav Papa and Rav Zvid. That's why I really want to bring it out. The Rav Zvid would hold that even when he sold in 3 trees, and in a regular case, if I sell you 3 trees, you get the land because the regular sell the lanes. However, if I sold the land to somebody else, I don't get it. Wow. So again, Rav Papa is even by 2, Rav Zvid is even by 3. It's a very extreme machlokes. If you really, I want everyone to really understand that it's very extreme. Because what happens when you regularly sell a karka? If I regularly sell a karka with 3 trees, and I keep the land according to Rav Zvid, you sell the lanes. But if I sold it to someone else, then the land goes to you. Rav Papa goes the opposite. When I sell the land, then you do get the land under the trees. But when I don't sell it, I keep the land. Do we understand how it's extreme machlokes? Okay. So now that we have understanding Rav Papa and Rav Zvid, they're both extreme. They both go the extreme directions. Let's see it inside. Pshita Mocha Karka V'Shara Kolshu Yesh LaKarka. Right? We explained that here we're discussing a case. The seller states explicitly, I am keeping the trees. The halacha is he retains the 2 trees, even when it's 2 trees, not 3. 3 is more pashut. He gets the karka. Ba'afilu le'Rabbi Akiva da'amar ba'ayin yafa meicher. We're going to see Mirta Shem on Samach Dalet Aman Aleph. We're going to see it again in Ayin Aleph. We're going to see what is the halacha regarding someone who sells a house or a bar with a pit. When I sell you a sada with a, not a bar with a pit, a field with a pit. What happens when I sold you? This is mamash. We're talking about the path. We're going to see this later. That Rabbi Akiva and Rabbanan have a machlokes if I get a path to myself. Rabbi Akiva is the chiddush. He's going to say, this is what I was telling you, Julie, about jumping. He's going to have to just jump along. Rabbi Akiva says a chiddush, Meicher ba'ayin yafe meicher. Which means to say is, I sell you a land, but the pit is for myself. Now the pit is smack in the middle of the field. Right? So Zok Rabbi Akiva, I sell you Zok Rabbi Akiva, I sell you I'm even giving over to you the path to the pit in the middle of a field. Can you pass me the Perish Chai for a moment? I think they would show on Samach Dalet Amud Beis the illustration of what's going on. Nope, nothing going on. I thought maybe they would show it. Okay, the point is, I have a field, 100 acres big. Smack in the middle of the field is a pit. Clearly in the contract says the pit belongs to me. Now, Jack questioned this. How do I get to the pit? How in the world do I get to the pit? Right? You also had the same question, Julie. What What is going on? So we're going to see it's a machlekes. Meicher ba'ayin ra meicher, or meicher ba'ayin yafa meicher means you're very generous. And what happens is you're going to end up having to buy back from the new owner the schusim to get to your pit. Right? The Rabbanan is going to hold ein adam right says sheyitel ma'is v'yifrach ba'after. Person's not going to give money to what now? How am I going to get there? Right? I can't fly. There's no helicopters those days. So therefore, the machlekes meicher ba'ayin ra meicher or meicher ba'ayin yafa meicher. Okay, so Akiva rolls that a person sells ba'ayin yafa, and therefore the only way to get back by the pit is by purchasing again. However, Rabbanan are going to hold. Come on, ain't nothing right there. Lifrach ba'avir, right? I can't sell you a land and not be able to get there if I need my pit in the middle. So, however, the Gemara says even according to Akiva that says meicher ba'ayin yafa meicher. Hani milegabe barvados. That's regarding the barvados where you sell it generously. Why? Deloi michashubara. They don't impair the ground around them. Right? So you could see the Rashi says you could put seeds around the ground. So there, a person, he's confident that the purchaser is not going to ask him to remove his pit. Therefore, he has no rights. However, avali let's be real. We all know the Mikhashi Ba'ara impairs the ground, right? We went through this 25 amas. The root system could go all the way to the pit. The nourishment 16 amas. However, Shiure Shire, he leaves some land for himself. And therefore the Hainu, the Lashon Ishbam is that he's willing to go Meicher Ba'ayin Ra Meicher. Now, I am questioning to myself, if so, he should be able to get up to 25 amas of land. But I guess it's not realistically possible. That means to say is it's not financially viable to sell a karka and say, oh, I want 25 amas around the tree because the roots are so extensive. However, he's selling the land underneath, that's for sure. D'iloi shayir le'malei, the buyer might tell him eventually once the tree dies, akari lot of his all, get out of here. Therefore, uproot your tree and go and leave. Therefore, all agree that the seller reserves the land around the trees for himself. Okay. Mar's going to discuss the other way around. What happens? You sold the trees, machir lanis, but b'shayir karkalafana. But you left the land for yourself. So that itself, we're going to see, is machlekes pelukta de Rekiva v'Rabbana. That what? 3 trees we explained. Kulam amaydu. It's called the sadi lanis. You get the ground underneath. Where's the machlekes kick in?
With less than
By
3.
2. Less than 3. 2. Sounds like 2 dafka. I'm not sure if 1. It sounds like 2. So shayir karkalafana. Pelukta, the buyer has land on the trees because he sells them. Ba'ayin yafa, right? He's very generous. Okay. The Rabbanon that hold meicher ba'ayin ra meicher less late. The buyer doesn't have any land, therefore he has no schos to replant ones if they die. Now the Gemara explains this machlekes is not related to Rizvid and Rav Papa, right? Now, what would you think? You would think they are very similar, because why? Rizvid holds that the tree owner gets no land. That was Shitas Rizvid. Oh, I'll tell you, the Shitas Rabbana, right? Rizvid holds you never get the land. According to Rav Papa, who holds that the tree owner is going to get something, right? Just because he holds, you tell him, just like you got this chus forever, so too I got this chus forever. Sounds like Shitas Rabbi Akiva. However, the Gemara is going to explain they have nothing to do with each other. So the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva, Islay, Vafilu Ravzvid. You, Rabbi Akiva, that what? The hold in the earlier case. There is going to say you don't get land. Rabbi Kiva is still going to work. The Amar ain't lie. Earlier said you don't get it. That's Hani Milagavish Nela Kucha. This is what I was telling you outside. It's a very extreme machlekes. It's only regarding the Kucha. The Amar the bar says Leslie Beilanois. Just like the Baal Karka tells the owner of the trees. Just like I have no share in your trees. Ledidach Nami Laslach Bekarka. So too you have no share in my land, right? It's a two-way street. So what's the argument to make it a little stronger? What's his force? His force is he was saying, usually by Kinyan Agav, we just explain trees as secondary. So if you weren't in the picture, there's no question I get the trees. Now you're in the way, you took away my trees. So too, who are then, it's a two-way street. Just like I thought I was getting the trees, I found that he sold it to you. You're learning the hard way. He sold me the land, and you're not getting the land underneath your trees. Okay. However, where a purchaser buys trees, this is Shitas Rav Akiva, that Reb Zid could agree with Rav Akiva, the Meicher, Ba'ayin, Yafe, Meicher, and he includes the land to get the trees. However, to make it more simpler, Rashbam explains later on that Avad, you can't say Meicher, Ba'ayin, Yafe, Meicher when it's a buyer involved. Meicher means I'm generous. You know, a lot of times people, they throw it in. You know what? In the house, take it along with you. Take the solar panels, whatever they're trying to sell along. It's only when there's no other buyer involved. The second there's another buyer involved, there's no such a concept of meicher ba'in yafim meicher. And the Gemara explains the other way around. Those shalar abana that hold less levi avilar papa the amar yesh la. Even our papa holds you do have. Hani milik abashnei lekuchos the amar lei. Ki heichi, just like he sold you the land. Sorry, excuse me. Ki heichi dilidach. Just like he sold you the land. This is been buying your face, sold it to you. That what? In a Zokter Shpandi, you're going to keep it forever. Lididi nami zabin ba'ayin yafet. So too for me, he's selling me the land that I could get them forever. Havel hacha meicher ba'ayin ra'a meicher. So I'm thinking now. While I was reading these words, I had a question in my mind, and I'm going to try to explain a little an answer to it. My question was, whenever you sell a karka is forever. Otherwise, you're a schiris. So what is the argument between the owner of the trees telling the owner of the karka, oh, just like he sold it to you be'ayin yafa because it's forever? Slow down, kid. There's no way to sell me a karka if it's not forever. Trees, we clearly see, there's an argument, it depends. Trees, we can understand it's a usage. I'm selling you the trees till it's gone. So what is the argument? I'm thinking now from the last words. Meicher ba'ayin ra meicher. Aval hacha meicher ba'ayin ra meicher. Dahainu zok rabbanan. However, in the case of a papa that says yesh lai, is because there's two buyers involved, and since there's two buyers involved, even if you're going to hold in a regular scenario when I'm the guy keeping the rest of the karka, zok, let's break it down the other way around. According to Rabbanon, they hold meicher ba'ayin ra meicher. What's that mean? A person doesn't sell a generosity. However, let me ask you a question. Even a person that sells something be'ayin ra, do you agree if he's getting rid of everything, is it going to make a difference to him really if he sells him the land underneath the trees or he sells it to you? It makes zero difference. So the point is, even though in a chanami, but when the person holds on to the karka, he sells the ba'ayin ra. Over here, there's two buyers. There's no difference who's getting what and where. They don't care.
He's getting rid of it.
He's getting rid of it. So memelo zakta bali lanois. Just like to you, he's selling it forever and ever. He's fine with that. He had the same das to sell it to me forever and ever. The trees. That's his argument. And opposed to in a regular case where he's keeping it to himself, oh, that's ayin ra. But his argument is there is no ayin ra because he's getting rid of it, like Julie's saying. There's no ayin ra. Therefore, he has a point of saying, just like you, he sold it forever. He had the same das to me. I think that is the pshat. How can we understand this nekuda the Gemara Rabbana? All right. Zok the Gemara Amri Nahardoi Acholon Ritzufon. If Zok the Nahardoi, he ate it, the 30 trees we mentioned above, right? We had a 10, 10, 10. It was scattered. Some of them didn't produce. However, what happens? Acholon Ritzufon, which means he planted them very densely. Like we explained, it needs to grow healthy. 10, it's 250. There's saplings, it's 250 amas. What happens? He put in 15 or 20. So instead of every 250 grams, every 125. Why? The reason is that since by you putting in 15 saplings, you're going to immediately have to remove it in a very, very short period of time, because what happens is it grows, and you're going to lose all your natias if you don't uproot it and replace it in a different field. Now, since, like we explained, a chazaka is established by harvesting your fruits. If you use a field just to store grain as a storage yard, there's no chazaka. Now trees, it was very normal, the way they used to do it. They used to do eser netias, like we saw in a basra, and then when it got bigger, we ended up only doing 3. Remember, we saw very clearly it's 833 and a third. So therefore, it made sense that you could put 10 and eventually move it. However, once you put more 10, you're going at a quicker pace, and you're really showing me that you're trying to chaperine temporarily as much as possible to consume it. Now, another point the Rashbam brings out, that by the 10 saplings, it was there for many and many years. It wasn't also 1, 2, 3, 10 saplings, quickly do 3. It was a long, long process, enough to establish a chazak. When you're going to do 15, you're showing us that you're trying to take advantage of the owner. Maskef lo revolver, we're going to do a little more, I'm going to stop. Maskef lo revolver, lama'ata. You're telling me that someone harvests too much, too densely. It cannot establish a chazaka. Hi, Mishra da spasta b'maikonilo. What is a spasta? A spasta, we explained, is animal fodder. Now, they used to put it together very densely, and then they would transplant it. They would basically move it, taco. So the question is, right? You're telling me anything that you move, how could you do a spasta? A spasta works almost like 15 netias. How could you ever establish a chazak on a spasta? The way they used to a spasta, they would fill it up, stuff it up, let it grow, and then remove it. So Marava, because of that question, it's not about that. It's mecharon ritzufa ein lekarka. You sold the trees that were planted too densely. Ein lekarka. It's our sugya, what we just said. The buyer does not really receive any land. Why? The answer is, in such a scenario where I sell you trees that are too densely, we all know that those trees are going to have to get removed very, very quickly. They're going to have to get uprooted. Therefore, it's not considered a sale of a tree, even though in a scenario where it's more than 3 trees. Omer Rav Zera, let's finish with this. That ketanoi. Rav Zera said that what Rava just said, Ein lekarka is really machlekes of a tanoim. Well, it says in the Mishnah as follows. We have a machlekes, Mishnah Kalaim, Parakeh, Mishnah Beis. It talks about, the Torah says, you're not allowed to have in a single grapevine any grapes. Can't mix the two. Or a vineyard. Not only is it forbidden to plant it, it's also by if it got planted, right? It's also by it's called Kalaim. However, the area around a vineyard is much more extensive than a single vine. And for this reason, it's very crucial to understand, is it one single vine, halacha, Dick, or it has a halacha of a vineyard, of a kerem, which makes it much more damage. Talk to Gemara as follows. Kerem shu natua apachis ma'arba. You have a vineyard. It's planted, so usually a typical vineyard had every row of the vineyard, if you look at the illustrations that we saw earlier, they have dalit amas in between for the animals to go back and forth. However, over here, you did it less. You did it 3 amas. Reb Shimon Omer ain't a kerem. You don't look at it as a vineyard. What is it? It's one big vine. One big vine, because a vineyard is masudar. You have a bunch of vines. They go up and down with the animals. Over here, it's one mishkababel. Since they're closely together, they're planted too closely, you can't even plow them normally. It would have the halacha of a vine, and therefore you'd only have to do, for example, gimel tvachim away from it. However, what happened to the middle? We look at the interior vines, the ones that are in between the 4 amas. It's only 3, right? It's supposed to have a space of 4 amas. There's some of the vines are in the path. We look at it, it's like it's not present. Therefore, it would have a halacha of a kerem. And the reason is because it's going to get removed. Because you're about to uproot it. Therefore, we ignore it. So same thing over here. Zogt Rava. Rava is going to hold like Reb Shimon that we don't see it because it's going to get uprooted. However, Chachamim is going to hold it sticks. And therefore, they would hold, you would get like a Sadi Elon, and you would taka get the karka, Yetz Hashem. Tomorrow we're going to pick up on the bottom of Amri Nardoi Lamed Zayin Amid Beis.